What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Josh Robinson Show. I am, of course, Josh, and now it's going to be 2 weeks in a row where I actually have a guest. So, not so much the pocket-sized podcast this week, because I'm sure I'll talk with this dude for more than 20 minutes. I'm nearly guaranteed that I'll do that. I am very, very excited to have the fine person that will introduce himself in just a second, because it's someone that you probably, if you follow me on Twitter, you would probably know that I interact with this guy a lot because we're always kind of tweeting at each other, and we've always wanted to have a chat and do something together. Just I guess the timing hasn't ever really worked out, or I guess you would say, but it's finally happening. It's kind of happening off just random, hey, are you free? And I'm like, I sure am. So let's do this. So I'll let him introduce himself to the world because I don't think I can. I'm not great with introductions, and I like when people introduce themselves because they can put themselves over, and that's what I'm all about. So introduce yourself to the lovely listeners.
Well, I only know how to introduce myself one way on podcasts, so I'm going to stick with what I know. My name is Zak from the Smark and Friends podcast, where I watch wrestling with people who don't watch wrestling.
It's like autopilot, isn't it?
It's like that's all I know how to do, man. It's like one of my 4 phrases.
I'm very excited to have Zak here. Like I said, we chat quite a bit, and we just really haven't ever done anything together, I guess.
Yeah, man, this conversation is long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue. I'm really excited. We're gonna chat some wrestling, and then we'll chat Smark and Friends a little bit because I just want to pick Zak's brain because I just think this isn't gonna be a blowing smoke up your ass kind of chat,
geez.
but I'm gonna do it a little bit. I just do think you're just very intelligent with how you approach doing podcasting. You're very different from anybody else because let's be honest, there's a lot of podcasts, let alone a lot of wrestling based podcasts. There's a lot of us for good reason.
Yeah,
podcasts. I guess essentially anyone can really make a podcast. Really, I mean that's how I started.
Absolutely, yeah.
We'll get to podcasts in just a second, but I mean, it's to put anything in context here for everyone listening, because this will come out whenever I get to uploading this in the next few weeks. But it's literally like we were chatting, like, when can we do this? And we're like, yeah, we'll do here. And then it was like, the Rumble is on, or Hard Times is on, or this wrestling event is on, or this wrestling, because, dude, in 2020 there is more wrestling probably than ever before. A lot more high-level wrestling than ever before. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's it's a good time to be a wrestling fan. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess, is too much wrestling.
Yeah. Too much content. I can't watch all this.
All right, so WrestleMania week is huge. It's WWE. It's bigger than WWE, I guess you could say, but wrestling. I know you're a wrestling fan that you don't. Do you watch a lot of WWE anymore? I know that somewhere along the line you kind of maybe jumped off a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of stepped away from WWE in summer of 2019. So I'm actually it's funny you mentioned all this because this is one of the reasons I'm actually excited for Mania week because I used to just kind of hover around WWE and NXT during that week. I didn't have a lot of time for all the independent content.
Yeah.
And that's going to be very different this year. Very excited to kind of explore that side of the spectrum.
Yeah, because it's not like there isn't, like we're going to keep drilling this home, but it's not like there isn't a lot to choose from because there's a lot to pick from. It's just kind of pick your favorite flavor, I guess. It's like ice cream.
It's wild. You look at the calendar of all these shows that are happening in that weekend in that city and even around that city, just all across the board. And so much of it is going to be available on demand. It's truly remarkable. I've already said this on the podcast. It probably won't be this probably won't be the last time I say it either. But it's such a great time to be a fan. Such a great time.
It really is. It really is a peak time to be in love with professional wrestling, whatever kind you like, because it's not like for anyone that is just watching maybe more of a WWE product or even an AEW product, there's a lot going on with just those alone, not to mention the amount of independent wrestling that's blowing up as well as all other wrestling, New Japan and what it may be. But how long have you been watching? Listen, wrestling is a wacky thing. It really is. It's sometimes it's like I just say it's really weird. Like I mean that in a of course a good way, but it is
Oh,
just a
100%.
weird. It's a weird thing that it's like sometimes I step back and I'm like, how did I start watching this and getting so involved and so immersed in this world? Because there's some things about it that you're like, wow, this this is some crazy stuff. How did it all? I know it's probably a cliche question, but how did it all really begin for you? And what's your kind of first memories of diving into this crazy world?
Oh, dude, I wish I could like give you something concrete, but like I've been watching wrestling for as long as I can remember. I I have this baby picture somewhere in my folks' place that I've been looking to unearth at some point. But like I do have a picture of me like as a little kid. I don't know how old, maybe 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And I'm watching wrestling. I'm probably watching with my older brother in that instance. But that's like again as far back as I can remember. Like early days of my fandom, like I was watching more so tapes, whatever
Yep,
was available at the video store.
yep,
Um, and I guess it was kind of like the Monday Night Wars where I started having more like more rounded sense of like the big picture of wrestling,
yep,
if that makes sense.
yep.
Like it wasn't just like watching a tape here and there. It was watching like the full stories unravel as they do. So yeah, all my life, man. Couldn't tell you the first match I saw, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
been. I've explored a lot of the library of professional wrestling, so to speak.
Yeah, you and me both. Don't worry. What
Mhm.
is like the if you're you watch what I love about Smark and Friends is the fact that you watch people with you watch wrestling with people that don't really know what wrestling is, or if they do, they have very little understanding, or they haven't watched a lot. I guess you would probably have to think about this in a lot of ways when you're kind of watching wrestling with people that don't watch wrestling. Is what really draws you into wrestling? What makes you a fan of wrestling? Are you that wrestling fan that's like, I live for just great wrestling in a match? Are you the wrestling fan that's more drawn into like segment, like the entertainment side? Is it just a perfect blend of everything? What draws you into wrestling?
I would say it's probably like the perfect blend of everything. Like I love a good long match as much as anyone does, but I really need to be invested in these characters.
Yeah.
When I'm doing something on Smark and Friends, I don't quite have the same luxury of like sharing my fandom in that way, because like I only have like a certain amount of time to capture my guest,
Yeah.
who's not familiar with wrestling. I watch one match. I don't watch the lead into the match. I don't watch the few weeks that's been building up to it or anything. So yeah, like I guess with Smark and Friends, I kind of celebrate my appreciation for more fast-paced kind of matches that
Yeah.
don't necessarily need a story to be exciting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I guess my fandom doesn't really show through as well as it could on the show. But yeah, I'm a big picture kind of fan of wrestling. I like long-term stories, and I got to be invested in these characters to for me to stick in with it for the long run there.
Yeah, I guess it's probably hard with the amount of time that you have with a guest to really, if you had, hours and hours of it. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to show someone wrestling and be like, hey, this is why I like
Yeah,
this. Like, I want you at least maybe not like it by the end of it, but understand why I love it. I think I've done that with several different just friends or whatever, and I've just gone, this is a lot of fun just to do, just to see how other people react, because I'm sure there's many times where you thought something was golden within wrestling, and then you kind of see it with rose-colored glasses almost, because you're kind of biased towards wrestling, and then you're like, would this really work with someone that doesn't like wrestling or has never really been exposed to wrestling? So you have all these different kinds of people, which we'll talk about more, I'm sure, throughout this chat, that come on Smark and Friends from all different backgrounds and different professions and what it may be. And you're probably going, this might not, capture someone the way that this did with this person, or whatever that really entails. But it would be such I, I don't know, a lack of a better term, rewarding experience just to watch wrestling with all these different kind of people and just kind of, I mean, you've got to worry about, you know, keeping the show kind of flowing, but just watching their reactions to things must be like kind of like, wow, this is fun to do for
it,
something that you love.
Yeah, you really hit it on the head there. It is very rewarding. It's a lot of fun to watch some of these matches vicariously for the first time all over again.
Yeah.
And even before I started Smark and Friends, like I was doing that with a handful of friends, like you do with your friends as well. And it's so cool. I think the first time like the idea for the show started budding, I was watching welcome Connor, who he hosts. Rocket Man Explorers on our podcasting network, formerly known as Bolty Boinking. We were watching the Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and Mankind. Again, Connor doesn't know anything about wrestling, so watching that spectacle, watching him react to it was so much fun.
Oh yeah, it would be.
And
That's always one of my
yeah,
go-to matches, by the way. That's always in the bunch of wrestling matches that I'll show people first, because I mean, spectacle is a great word for it. It's just, it's listen, let's be honest about that match. It's not a technical masterpiece by any sense of the word.
not at all.
There's much better, quote unquote wrestling matches to watch, but that is just it really just encapsulates like wrestling, if that makes any sense. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely, and like that kind of like falls back on what I was saying a bit earlier about like just pardon me, sorry about that.
That's all good.
Watching something that stands on its own without having to watch the backstory leading up to the match and everything. And you watch that backstory, like it makes the match better certainly, but you don't need it to enjoy
No way, no.
Mankind getting thrown off and through the cell. I remember actually, just anecdotally, the first time I quote unquote watched that match, this was like way back in the day. You know, like if you're ordering something on pay per view, you would flip to the pay per view channel and it would be unscrambled.
Yeah.
But if you didn't pay for it, like the TV would be scrambled. Like you could maybe get like a faint picture of it. Anyway, I did not order King of the Ring that year, but I did switch to the scrambled channel. I could kind of hear Jim Ross, see what's going on, and like I remember, like, oh, I have a 6 seconds of like this clear picture of them fighting on a cage, and then like I thought the screen just bounced as part of the scramble.
Oh
And
yeah, it would be all like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm like visualizing it.
yeah, and I was like, oh man, that's wacky. It just looks like he just threw Mankind off of a Hell in a Cell. How crazy!
What a classic stitch up.
Yeah, yeah. Funnier when I think about it. I guess it's hard to articulate
I
as a
get what you
comment.
mean. I get what you
Yeah,
mean, but it's like I said, that match is always something that I couldn't even tell you how many times I've actually watched that match, because it's like uncountable at this point. There's so many times that I've watched that match, and I don't know about you, but I think this is pretty much the universal saying with with wrestling fans, is that every time I watch it, it still makes me get like that face. I know no one can see me right now, but that face you make when you're like, oh boy, like it's like you want to look away, but you can't stop. It's like a car wreck, I guess. It's like
yeah. We all know the face. We all have a
yeah,
Mankind Undertaker face. I think.
yeah. What a just it's just a that this is like I'm glad that that kind of stuff doesn't happen, I guess, I guess nothing like that will ever happen again. In a
Yeah, it
good
shouldn't.
sense. It shouldn't. No,
Yeah,
it really shouldn't have happened in the first place, but I mean, it's just, it's such an iconic image, him getting thrown off of that Hell in a Cell, and then getting back up and getting thrown through the Hell in a Cell. I mean, that's just another thing in itself, and then the tooth with the nose, and it's just a brutal match.
yeah,
I think sometimes I forget that there's actually like a match that precedes those two big falls.
yeah, yeah.
There's still thumbtack
It's
spots and everything. It's pretty crazy.
yeah,
Growing up,
that's actually. Sorry,
go on.
just one more anecdote about that match when I was watching with Connor. Like that, I think that was my favorite part was when we thought he thought the match was over, and
Yeah.
then Mankind gets off the stretcher and comes back to the ring. Like I remember the look on his face. It was just something else.
I get goosebumps when I think about that all the time. Like him getting off and then holding his arm and like climbing the Hell in a Cell again. You're like, oh wow. It's just like no one should be able to take that much punishment on their body. I mean, you've seen how Mick Foley walks today. I mean, it's not great. I'm sure that probably didn't add to it. I mean, he's had a lot of brutal things happen. I'm a big Mick Foley guy. Are you? I'm a big Mick Foley fan.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah,
Mick Foley.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the perfect blend for me because he can be that hardcore crazy, guy that's getting thrown off the cage, or he can be that goofy guy as Mankind,
Yeah.
kissing Stone Cold, Vince McMahon's cast, and bringing in Yerple. But he can also be that crazy character, and he's just got so many layers to him. And he doesn't look like how a wrestler should look. If you know what I mean, it's just
Oh,
crazy. I'm a big Mick
yeah,
Foley guy.
yeah. Same. He definitely looked unconventional, and he was like,
Perfect word.
yeah, he wasn't a mat technician either, but like, uh, but those are the guys I like. As long as you can tell a story, I don't care if you can't. I don't care if your headlock is shit. As long as you know
Yeah.
how to tell a story in the ring, like you've sold me.
Same here. Same here. Growing up,
Can
watching
I
through
swear on your show?
swear all you want. Go ahead.
Excellent. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I've got no filter with that kind of stuff. Growing up, though, as a kid, Monday Night Wars, and then heading into the Ruthless Aggression era. Just growing up watching wrestling. We mentioned Mick Foley, but who's some of the people that kind of, I guess, invited you to watch this wacky world?
I was a big Bret Hart guy, big Hart Foundation. That was I loved what they were doing with the Hart Foundation, especially as a Canadian. Uh,
I was gonna say, we got a Canadian over here.
yeah, that was the Hart Foundation was the first bad guy group that I started to like, even after knowing it was all a work, because younger days I didn't necessarily know that.
Me either.
Um,
It wasn't so much better watching it when you didn't know.
exactly, yeah, yeah. But Hart Foundation, Ken Shamrock, funny enough, D'Lo Brown.
Me too.
Um,
D'Lo was always like
D'Lo,
he was never my main top guy, but he was in there, and I was like, I love D'Lo. I love his music and
yeah,
just his head bob, and I'm like, D'Lo's great.
yeah, absolutely. I loved his music. Danger at New York is so badass. I
D'Lo's
remember
wonderful.
I went to like a live show, and he was, I guess it was a dark match. He was against Just Incredible.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, I was sitting with my brother. We were way in the back, and I think I was maybe the only person standing after D'Lo picked up the win. And being the only person standing, I guess he was able to single me out even all the way up there. And I like to think he was pointing at me at that moment, but who knows?
Oh man, I'm glad you said D'Lo. D'Lo's
Uh,
just D'Lo's just great. I never really I've had a ton of conversations with different people throughout, I guess, wrestling Twitter. I guess that's what we're calling it. When did that start being called wrestling Twitter, by the way? Because I feel like one day it wasn't that, and the next day it was like, this is wrestling Twitter. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's very fitting, but just like, okay, wrestling Twitter's the thing. But I've talked to many people, and if I mention D'Lo Brown, they're like, yeah, he was fine. I'm like, someone be a D'Lo mark with me, because I love D'Lo. The
Fuck
Lowdown
yeah.
was great, Sky High, everything was great about D'Lo.
I
He's
loved
a
when he had the chest protector. That was like such
oh
a great gimmick.
round of
Like such,
applause, round of
yeah,
applause.
great stuff.
Now we can just be D'Lo stands on Twitter. That'll be fine by me.
Can we
Be
have like
happy.
the D'Lo Brown show, just like going week to week in the career of D'Lo Brown?
It'd just be me and you listening to
Yeah,
it.
producing.
Honestly, I don't even care. I'd be happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, I jumped in a little bit after that because I'm a baby, so I jumped in. I started watching wrestling in about the year 2000, but I can't really remember it until about 2002. So I
Sure.
missed out on all of the good times, I guess, in the Monday Night War era. I was kind of jumping in as it was kind of ending. I wish I was at an age where I could appreciate the Monday Night Wars era when it was happening, because I just think it was a crazy time. But then I guess in a sense we're kind of getting it now, but not really, because the world's a very different place and Twitter exists now, so it's even different. And we'll get to newer stuff soon. But
Yeah.
that time in wrestling is just looked upon so, the memories of that time. There's a lot of fond memories I have of just growing up watching. I mean, the Ruthless Aggression era is something different. Again, some people are like, it's not as good as the Attitude era. Other people are indifferent on it. I'm a big fan of that era. It had a lot more we have an evolution of wrestling from the 90s or from the 80s to the 90s to now. It's very different in the ring. It's much more focused now on like in-ring action. Like we're getting across the board better in-ring product than we ever really have been. And I think that time from like 02, 03 up until, now was a transitional period, because I started to feel like we got more good wrestling on a more consistent basis throughout that time. So, going through you be coming into your teenage years in some form in that time, and starting to probably appreciate wrestling more. Were you always just, I guess this is probably a pretty, this is probably the same for everybody, but we're all kind of watching WWE's product throughout the early 2000s. When did you start to discover other stuff outside of WWE? Was that not too much later?
Well, I mean, like if you count the Monday Night Wars, I was watching WCW as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, the TSN used to air Raw live on Monday and then air Monday Nitro the next day. So I did kind of have like this category of like the idea of outside of WWE or WWF at the time, and I peripherally heard of ECW at the time, but I didn't really have the channels to watch that.
Yeah.
And of course, this is before internet and less legal means to find content you want to watch were available. Outside the WWE bubble, I guess like, funny enough, like the 2000s are kind of a weird timeline for me and my fandom. Like I watched a lot of the Ruthless Aggression era, then I kind of like leaned out just for mostly for college, and I was occupied.
Fair.
And that was also when TNA was kind of getting their feet under them, as well as Ring of Honor starting to become a bit of a scene. So funny enough, I guess you could say like it's been fairly recent in which I kind of started exploring outside of the WWE, at least regularly.
It's weird because it's so many people that I've talked to. Everyone at some point in their life, for the most part, has dipped out of wrestling at some point. I haven't. I never have stopped watching, which is probably accounts to my brain capacity at the moment. A bit crazy. I mean, I've been watching just non-stop, and I'm just like wrestling. But it was growing up right through until probably about 2000. Other than TNA, it was probably it was just WWE until about 2010, 11, when I started to discover that there's a world outside of WWE. There's a lot of Japanese wrestling, and there's independent wrestling, and I'm like, this is really good. I'm always gonna be, I think, that dude that just watches mainly WWE product, but I think that's just a little part of it is just what I'm comfortable with, what I'm accustomed to. It's weird when you go to watch independent programming or just anything outside of WWE, and your brain is like, what is this? It's like you're so used to seeing wrestling in a very like certain way. When you just like fairly recently, you're saying in the last couple of years you've really discovered independent wrestling, but was there a weird transition for you to go from like a WWE product to everything else?
Yeah, there's something of like a recalibration that kind of has to happen. You have to learn the visual language of the product that you're watching. I mean, like WWE's visual language, it's very concrete. Like, I'm not saying this to like down talk them or anything, but like you almost know what camera angles are coming, so to speak.
100%. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of like learning, relearning again that visual language. When I stepped away from WWE, another thing I kind of experienced was a bit of FOMO, a bit of fear of missing out there, because there's still a lot of wrestlers who work there who I very much support and want to see them succeed. So like, as much as like you're recalibrating to learn how to watch these other products, you're sorry, excuse me again. You're also kind of like saying goodbye to other things, so to speak.
It's I guess there's pros and cons to everything, every decision that you make. It's just like, well, if I do this, then I won't get this. But how do you?
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about like the podcast again in a minute because I'm dying to pick your brain at that. But I'd be silly not to ask you. We're in a landscape at the moment, especially with the internet and social media and stuff, where it's a very like us versus them mentality, in the sense of like, if you're watching this, then you must hate this, and if you're watching this,
Oh,
then you
God.
must hate this. And I'm sure you know what I'm referring to with AEW, WWE, New Japan, everything. It just seems like it is very much like, if you support one, you can't support the other. I've noticed with you is that while yes, you're not really watching a WWE product anymore, it's not like you're constantly going out of your way just to be like, I hate them, I'm on this person's side, or I'm watching this. It's just like, I'm just watching wrestling and I'm having a good time. That's the very much
Yeah.
approach that I like to have. Is just like, yes, I'm probably paying more attention to a WWE product. However, I'm not going out of my way to constantly shit on anything else that's going on. I've just got my eyes open to whatever I want to watch. It's all good wrestling at the end of the day. There's really no wrong answer for me, for whatever someone's watching. But for someone who isn't watching, is similar in how I think about that. What is your take on all of this? Ever since it's been October and NXT's been against AEW and whatever, it seems like that's been much more prominent within social media, especially the Twitter world.
Yeah, it's I'll be frank, man, it's fucking embarrassing watching
Yeah.
people like go at it like my company's better than your company. It's like it we're watching an art form, and there's no accounting for taste. Uh, uh, Taste is subjective,
Yeah.
and people are arguing about their subjective tastes as if they're objective facts, which they're absolutely not. You can't, like, I could tell you that my favorite wrestler in the whole wide world is David Arquette, and if someone wants to tell me that I'm wrong, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
David Arquette is my favorite wrestler. He's not, but I can.
Hey, if he was, that's your flavor of wrestling. Who am I to say what your taste is?
This is exactly it, and like people on Twitter, like I don't know whether, like, again, it's if they take it personal. It's like, how can their wrestler be their favorite wrestler be this person? Because mine is this one. Am I wrong? I better attack that person. And like we see it, the big viral thing today was that graffitied
Oh yeah.
poster in a New York subway.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, did someone actually put effort into doing that? Like,
Waste of paint. Like, oh my god.
yeah, I mean, what a waste of vandalism. Go paint a mural. Go do something worthwhile if you're going to destroy city property.
Yeah, it's fucking embarrassing is the best way to put it, because it makes me. There's a lot of things that I love about social media, Twitter, whatever you're on, and I'm like, I get to talk to people like you from across the world, and I'm like, hey, I've formed like friendships with all these people, but then for every Zach, there's some douchebag having to tell me I'm wrong because I think this person is the best wrestler in the world, or I'm watching NXT, or I'm watching AEW. It's like, just let me do me. Sometimes it's like, it feels like I've gotten better at it, but especially, when I was first coming into this kind of wrestling Twitter, I kind of was like, ooh, can I tweet that? Because someone's going to yell at me if I tweet that. It's like, now I'm just kind of like, I don't really give a shit. Like, block and move
Oh,
on.
let them yell.
I don't care.
Let them expose themselves as like adult,
Idiots.
like idiots. Yeah, immature. It's
For
ridiculous.
the record, everyone, I've been very clear about this, but I think Io Shirai is the best wrestler in the world. So if you want to argue with me, be my guest. But it is wrestling. Twitter can be draining. The internet can be draining when it comes towards anything, but
Yeah,
wrestling it's subjective. Everything is subjective, but I mean, wrestling is just, people really pick wrestling to shreds, and I think that's why
and like,
we can't enjoy it as much as we used to, maybe.
yeah, and again, it's true for everything. I work in social media. That's how I make a living, and I see I see the behavior of wrestling Twitter and other platforms as well, and other fandoms and points of discussion. It's very absurd, and I don't know. The internet was a mistake.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wish sometimes I'm glad it exists, but I wish it wouldn't. Sometimes I'm just like, I've become so, the world we're in now, I don't know how you are, but for me, it's like hard to be separated from my phone at this point. Like I'm always just
Oh yeah.
constantly checking my phone. I've got to be up to date with everything. It's like I can't be doing anything without posting about it because someone's going to give me validation. That's the craziest world we live in. It's different for everybody, and I'm not some psychopath that's like I need validation from people, but I just mean in a general sense. But it is. We've become very accustomed to doing that, and that's like it's majority that do that, and I'm guilty of it. But how do you feel?
Same
It's
here,
like,
man. Same
yeah, it's
here.
like you
Yeah.
need that. Oh, someone's gonna, like it's no matter how much we say it doesn't matter. Like, how good is it to get like a tweet and then you get a like and then someone like comments on it? You're like, oh, validation of what I'm doing is
Yeah.
right. It's
That dopamine fix.
yeah, it's like it literally, and you're just like, oh man, it just brings a smile, and you're like, oh, I want more of that. It's like a drug. It really is like a
Yeah.
drug. Which is
Um,
just
it totally is. It's a very fair analogy. I find myself like I've been better with social media at putting my phone down. Again, like that's my phone is where I do my work, so it's like it's I have to put the phone down to stop working, kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, if I didn't have that check, I would probably be hovering over my phone a little more often. And I don't want to sound like I'm like guilt. Well, I don't want to say guiltless, but like I do have my phone in my hand more often than I would prefer, even on my free time.
me too.
Yeah, it's again,
I sleep next to it sometimes. I'm like, as soon as I wake up, I'm like, who's messaging me today? Where's my Snapchats? It's like, oh boy. Sometimes I do
yeah,
step
man.
back and you're like, oh god, you're so reliant on this little device.
The dopamine fix. It's a very real thing. Like yeah, the you're talking about it. Likes and retweets. They're activating a little pleasure center of your brain that sometimes you can't not listen to.
I know. And it's just like, I know I should stop, but guess what? I ain't gonna. I'm gonna keep posting the fact that I like Miss Congeniality or whatever I want to. Someone give me
Damn straight.
validation. But it's
Yeah.
we that's just, I guess, the year's 2020, and it's just gonna it's not going away anytime soon, and it's gonna keep expanding. The internet has grows more rapidly than I think we can even see. There's a lot
Hmm.
goes into it, and social media is a juggernaut of a thing now. Where whatever kind of social media you're using, there's always something, some kind of little pocket that you go into, and it's like it's like the fact that we can talk right now, with us being across the world from each other, and it's like it's a simple click, and I'm talking to you, and it's like wow, the internet is just pretty, it's incredible in a lot of ways. I mean that in good sense, but it is pretty crazy. Now something that else that again I just love. I just want to pick your brain so badly because I just love the way you approach things, and even just talking about social media and stuff with you, I can just be like, oh, you just got such a brain for things. But Smark and Friends. How how did you come up with this? Because it's in a sense it's like, why wouldn't someone think of that idea and really dive into this idea? But on the other thing, it's like, how did this even come about? Where did it all begin?
Okay, so Smark and Friends kind of came together. There's a bit of a confluence of events here.
Easy for you to
And
say.
yeah, uh, yeah. This first part's going to sound very random, but I promise it's involved in the story. As I mentioned, like I make a living now in social media, but my background is actually in theater and film design.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's I went to college. I studied that. I started a sense of a career in that field and everything, but unfortunately, I never really developed the momentum that I wanted, or I wanted to achieve at least. So I stepped away from that, and I found this new field in which I could make a living, but I kind of lost a lot of contacts from that field. Like a lot of people in the art scene.
Yeah.
It's a very, very competitive field.
It would
And
be. I could imagine. Ooh.
yeah, and
Dog.
yeah, very much so, and also just like very, very heavy schedules. Like everyone's like very busy, so I didn't quite see these folks as often as I would like. Um, Meanwhile, later on, rather, I guess I should say, meanwhile, it's not what I meant to say. My one of my closest friends, Tina, she and a couple of her friends launched the Two Finger Guns Club Network, which is the podcast network that Smark and Friends is a part of. They had a smaller roster of shows, but I was just kind of like brainstorming. I was out of the arts now, and I needed like some sort of I needed some sort of creative outlet, and I saw the opportunity there. But I didn't know what, I was like, oh, I could do a wrestling podcast. You know, I,
It's like, what about at this point? It's like this again, like we said before. There's a lot.
yeah, that's exactly it. And like, I have a lot of respect for, for shows like Reverb and like Dits on Wrestling, who are doing these amazing reviews week to week. But, pardon me, I, uh, I knew, one, I couldn't do it as well as the podcasts that were already out there, and two, I wasn't going to have the time to invest every week. And there's like, I listened to your episode with Ditz just this afternoon, and he kind of touched upon this. There's this bit of an unspoken obligation that you have to keep up if you want to like keep doing these shows.
I know
And I knew I wasn't going to have that in my wheelhouse either. So I knew I had to have like something that was less time intensive, that still satisfied my creative means. And then I went back to like, oh, I would love to touch base with some of these people again. Is there a way I could talk wrestling with people who don't watch wrestling? And again, I thought even further back to watching things like the Hell in a Cell with Connor and things to that effect. I'm like, oh, let's give that a try. So I pitched to Tina the budding concept of getting like this live reaction to a wrestling match with people who are not familiar with the medium or anything like that, but also give them a little platform to kind of promote their projects. And yeah, it started as that, kind of evolved from there, and we just wrapped up our third season now. So
crazy, by the way, because when I first started listening to Smark and Friends, I don't even know. Maybe I just seen you on Twitter somewhere or something like that. It just, for some reason, fell into my lap, and I'm like, what is this? Started listening to it, and I'm like, wow, this is a really just cool concept, because, again, there's a lot of wrestling podcasts, but there wasn't really anything that was doing this exactly like how you were doing it, and bringing in people from different form of the entertainment world, I guess you could say, and sitting down and just watching a match and just reacting and discussing it and seeing how these people react, because again, we can become very involved in the wrestling world, so we're almost preconditioned to know how we're going to think, or to know how the wrestling fans are going to think. It's like, okay, yeah, we disagree on things, but we're like, we know what the ins and out of the wrestling world is. We know, we're conditioned to it. But people who don't, you're like, wow, this is actually how you have a genuine reaction to something when you're not like expecting it, or you're not really knowing what's coming next. Because as wrestling fans, we're always like, we know what's happening next, even though we really never do. But we're always like, this is what's going to happen next, and we're for certain that this is going to happen, and we're on the ball with everything. As much as we're probably wrong a lot of the time, we always think we're right. But for people who don't watch wrestling, they don't know what's going on. It's just like, what is happening in this? Wrestling is, again, it's very weird. It's a very weird world,
so
and you're like, I'm sure you've had many times where you've been sitting around, or you've been talking about wrestling with someone who has no idea what's going on, or they've seen something and there's something cringy on, and you're like, I can't explain this. I don't know what's going on.
Oh yeah, actually, very recently, I celebrated my birthday actually at an indie show, and I had some friends, once again not wrestling fans, indulged me and came along for the ride. And
good friends right there.
Yeah, and oh man, did they not understand Joey Ryan? They did not.
God. Oh, I could imagine. They'd be like, wait, what? And you'd be like, no, wait, this is where it gets real good. Just wait till he starts doing stuff with his wiener.
Oh man. Trust me, it's subversive of the genre, people. It's subversive of the genre.
If you watched wrestling, you would understand. I've used that line a heap. a lot throughout the years. Someone that always is around me that never really has truly understood what wrestling is my mum. My mum is someone that just listen. When I was a kid, my dad used to watch it. My brother, my grandpa, my sister, everyone used to watch it. But mum didn't know what, and unless The Rock was on because my mum was in love with The Rock. But I mean, he's a very good-looking man. Imagine if, I could not blame the lady. But she was very much like, I don't know what's going on. The only two names that she ever knew was The Rock and Kane, because Kane used to scare my mum. But she didn't know what was going on, and the amount of times she's like, I've been watching wrestling, and she sat there and she's like, what is going on? I'm like, honestly, mum, I have no idea. I have no idea. Kane just tombstoned this priest. I don't really know why. There's some kind of wedding going on. Wrestling weddings, by the way. Everyone knows how I reacted to wrestling weddings. They're my favorite thing in wrestling. I'll take a good wrestling wedding any day. What's the best wrestling wedding in your opinion?
Oh man, Test and Stephanie.
Ah, good one. That is a good one.
I think that was just like the most worthwhile swerve that there's ever been in a wedding on TV.
Great. Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh man, Stephanie, do you take Triple H? Why, yes, I do.
Yeah. Sketchy. Certainly very sketchy.
That's a good word. I'm always a fan of Kane and Lita's wedding. I love Kane and Lita's wedding. In the all black, Lita did great in that. I've always liked that wedding. But that's the side, I guess, the other side of wrestling. Not just weddings, but that entertainment side that I think keeps me with wrestling in a weird way. Like I like you said at the start, I love a good long wrestling match like any of us, but that's the kind of stuff that keeps me here and keeps me drawn in. Is I live for that kind of stuff in wrestling because it's so over the top. Like wrestling is so elevated and everything's like times 100 in wrestling. So that's why Joey Ryan is a perfect example of that. He's so over the top and so sexualized, and I like Joey. Some people hate Joey Ryan. He's very polarizing, I guess is the word to use.
Certainly, yeah.
Some people. Well,
again, that's like another great example. Like I don't like Joey Ryan, but I'm not gonna like crap on people who do like Joey Ryan.
Fair, because I like Joey Ryan, but I can see why someone wouldn't. At the same time, I can see why you don't like him. But when we talk about Smark and Friends and how I kind of came into it and started listening to all these people. By the way, Smark and Friends is like great because it's like 30-40 minutes. I listen to it in the car. It's like perfect time for a nice little car ride to where I'm going or something like that. So just to let you know, I'm usually listening to it in the car. But I do really just love the concept because it's something that I've just like, so many wrestling podcasts, and I think wrestling podcasts are built on, if you're going to do a show that kind of everybody else is attempting to do, I think you've got to rely on you more so than the actual content. What I mean by that is like personality shining through. I think that's kind of separates a wrestling podcast from a good wrestling podcast. And there's many people that I'm like, I listen to these people for the people that are actually talking about wrestling, not so much about them talking about wrestling. It just happens to be a backdrop of their personality, if that makes any sense. And I think that's what I get you like. Entirely, yeah. I think that's what I've kind of. I don't just listen to wrestling podcasts. I like podcasts in general. I listen to all different kinds of podcasts, but the ones I stick listening to is the ones with personality and stuff like that. And I guess the weird thing about Smark and Friends is that it was the concept that drew me in first, instead of like, and then getting to know your personality, and then you having someone else on all the time is like the contrast of personalities that goes on. You're like the familiarity, like the comfortability of the show, and I'm like, it's nice and soothing, and I'm like, yes, okay, that's Zach. And then you've got people coming in and them kind of using this platform to not only promote what they're doing, but then watching wrestling, and that's the nice little backdrop to what's going on. So I think that's like what sets Smark and Friends apart from everything else, is that it's just a great concept, but it's also like, and I don't mean this in like a nasty way, it's just very simple. It's a very simple concept that works.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Like, I knew, I'm not trying to like down talk myself or anything, but like I knew I wasn't going to be like as dynamic a host as like some of the people who are out there. Like I know I know how I speak. I know my speech patterns, and that's all well and good. So like I do feel sometimes that like I needed to kind of uh, rise to meet the quality of my concept, if that makes sense.
I get what you mean.
Wow, that's like the most pretentious thing I've ever said. I apologize, but you know, that's I said it. It's out there, and I'm standing by it.
It is. I do understand what you mean. Like, how long has Smark and Friends been going for? You've just finished 3 seasons, but when did season 1 begin?
We launched the first episode of season one back in I want to say December of 2018.
Okay, so
It might be late November, but yeah, like late 2018. I know you since done the 3 seasons there.
yeah, so there becomes anyone that's listening to this that is producing podcasts or just content in general. There comes a point in it, and I'm sure you've probably crossed this as well, where you feel like you're just kind of going with the flow and you want to get comfortable with what you're doing, but you don't want to get too comfortable with what you're doing because you're like, is this just going to come across, as we kind of said in our little pre-chat, I don't want to ever come across as a robot that's just kind of going through the motions. I want to kind of keep things natural. How do you keep things as natural as you do? Because while you might not while you might seem like you don't want to overhype yourself at all, I'll happily hype you up. You keep things very natural, especially with people that you're having a different guest every single week for the most part. So I have the comfortability of having Kevin every week on Wrestling Reverb, so I kind of know. We kind of know each other in the sense of we've got to know each other well enough where we're like, I know what he's going to kind of, when he's going to speak, when he's going to not, and we've just kind of grown comfortable together in a good way. But how do you keep everything kind of gelled together when there's someone else with you each time you're recording?
Oh man, you know, it's funny. Like you say that like for your how you prepare is like you kind of just jump in free and like let it evolve from there. I do the opposite. I do a lot of
Yeah.
pre-planning. I do a lot of kind of guiding the not guiding the conversation, but I know what I want to ask them. Like I do some research on their projects and everything,
Yep.
so I'm not walking in, just asking them just to tell us what's up. And funny enough, like all of my intros that I do, like before my guest joins me, like I pretty much script those entirely,
Oh.
so I don't sound like a robot. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. Because like I also recognize that I have a bit of a stammer that kind of like manifests a little bit sometimes, and I thought, and like building a script for myself has been a way to combat that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once the guest comes in, I have my bullet points. Being more conversational, it's a lot more easy than just like reading. Introducing the show all by myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I just always had like an easygoing conversational nature with people.
Yeah.
Like I'm also like very comfortable just chilling and hanging in silence and watching something or whatever. But at the same time, like if I know where the conversation's going to go, I'm very happy in that milieu as well.
Yeah, it's really, when I first started doing this kind of stuff, I was just like talking into a microphone and hoping for the best. And I think now, I've said this many, many times, you have to have a lot, like, not a lot, you don't want to sound like an egomaniac or really cocky, but you have to have somewhat amount of self-confidence in yourself to be able to go, I can steer the ship, at least if something was to go wrong, or, it's very easy for me, as many people might come as a big shock, I can talk for days, I could probably talk underwater.
And dude, like not to blow smoke back at your direction for no reason at all. That like I'm constantly impressed like how you go from topic to topic just like so seamlessly. And now you're telling me that you don't prepare this. Like that's even more impressive to me. Like when you came back after holidays, the range of topics you covered in 20 minutes and going from one topic to another seamlessly was very impressive to me.
Oh, thank you.
So I just
I'll
wanted to
take the compliment.
yeah, you should. Please do.
Pat myself on the back. It's just, I think I have always been one I find it very comfortable to talk. I'm not really one, if I'm in a room full of people I don't know, I can make a conversation with kind of anyone I can kind of lock eyes with and be like, I'll make a conversation with this person. I'm not really great in a silent place because that's when I go crazy and I'm like, someone talk, because I need a conversation to keep me interested in what's going on. So I just find that that's why I've always kind of, I think, adapted to a podcast feel so, I don't want to say easily because it wasn't easy by any stretch of the means, but I've just kind of adapted to it fairly well. It's just because I'm like, I can talk. I love wrestling, so why not just start talking about wrestling and seeing if other people want to talk to me, basically. And then starting to talk about other things on through the Josh Robinson show and that, because I do have other interests, as I'm sure you do. We were talking, well, I've been kind of putting this all over Twitter the last few days. Whenever this comes out, I'll probably still be talking about it on Twitter. Let's talk about The Office for a minute.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
okay, so everyone knows this, I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan. That is my favorite show ever. And as soon as I finished Parks and Rec, and the many times I've rewatched that show, everyone's like, if you like Parks and Rec, you should really watch The Office. And I'm like, I've never, ever, in my life, until this week, have watched The Office. Not even 5 minutes of it. It's never come across me for some reason. Everyone's like, you like Parks and Rec, you'll love The Office. I'm like, I think a little bit for taking this long to watch it was a little bit out of like, fuck you, I'm not going to watch it because you're telling me to. My brother has been on my case for months, like, you need to watch The Office. You will love it. It's your kind of humor. I'm like, I don't know, not for me. The other night, I was just sitting, I was laying in bed, I was like, there's nothing to watch. I was on my streaming service over in Australia called Stan. That's what has The Office on it, and I was like, I suppose I'll give it a try. The first season is rough, and everyone was telling me, please, just keep going until the second season. It gets a lot better. So I'm in midway season 2, so no spoilers in this conversation for me. But, was The Office, were you one of those people that, like, seems to be the rest of the world except Josh Robinson, that watched The Office when it came out, or at least has watched The Office recently or whenever you did, and just been like, this is like the greatest show ever?
Oh yeah, I have. I didn't watch it when it first came out. Again, I was like, that was back when I was in college and didn't really have much time for any kind of TV, really. But like advent of Netflix and also just catching episodes here and there, finding it very funny. Yes, I am a huge Office fan. The Office is excellent.
I'm falling in love with it slowly.
Yeah,
It's
and I
becoming
know
my
what you mean.
jam.
And I know exactly what you mean about that first season. I've always felt like they tried to write Michael Scott as Ricky Gervais's character in its UK original, and it just doesn't work because Steve Carell is not Ricky Gervais.
No, very different.
And you know, season 2 happens. There's this bit of a character shift. Like he's still, he's just less abrasive and less crass. He's a lot more. His ill mannerisms come from naivete rather than
He's more just like I don't even know the word to describe him. Naive is a great word, but it's not so like mean-spirited. It's more from a different place. He still has those bits, don't worry, but well, from what I'm watching, but someone that I'm starting to really love in this second season is Phyllis. I'm starting to love Phyllis. I think
Phyllis is great.
Phyllis is great. Also, in the last couple of episodes I've just watched, I didn't think I would start liking her, but I really like Angela. Because she's so, like, just weird, and I'm like, I dig this a lot. But, I am starting to really enjoy it, and I can see, like, the Parks and Rec thing, like, if I like that, I'll like this. I can see why. It's kind of like a similar... Well, it's obviously like a similar concept, but it's also a similar kind of humor, that kind of dry humor that I just love. I love that kind of humor that's like almost not like ha-ha funny, if that makes any sense. It's more of a different kind of funny. I didn't even know how to...
It's just like being kind of like shocked and uncomfortable, but like...
Yeah. I am really starting to dig it. Are you a Parks and Rec fan? I keep mentioning it, but I didn't even ask you.
You know what? Like I have like pretty much only Netflix, and Parks and Rec is not on Netflix. And I would to watch it because Amy Poehler is just absolutely hilarious, and
She
there's
is.
other cast members on that show who I really like. I don't know the actor's name, but he plays Trevor on The Good Place, um,
Um,
and
are you talking
yeah,
about I've only watched The Good Place once through. Are you talking about Adam Scott?
Adam Scott. I mean, possibly. I don't know
Yeah.
the name. He's kind of like a bit lankier, brown
Yeah.
hair, white dude.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm pretty sure you're talking about Adam Scott. He plays Ben on Parks and Rec.
okay.
Yeah, he's very very good.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec is great. All right, so here's the deal. When I'm finished watching The Office, I'll come at you and be like, "We need to talk about The Office." Then when you somehow in some time in the future watch Parks and Rec, come at me and I'll I'll happily talk about it with you all damn day.
Perfect.
That is my favorite show ever. I can nearly recite most of those episodes word for word. And the first
Dude,
season,
Twitter
like
presence.
The Office, is kind of trash.
Half your Twitter presence is Parks and Rec gifts. So like
Yeah.
we
Oh,
we
my
done
my
do.
thank you, Leslie note. Thank you. Guilty of that one. That is my number
Doesn't-
one GIF selection thing in those recently used GIFs. It always all the girl dancing from Friday by Rebecca Black, which I know you
Oh,
love.
oh my God, she's amazing. Like I hope she's doing well.
That's me in a club when I've had a few drinks. I'm just like dancing like that and thinking I'm just look great, but I just look like garbage.
Man, like, I actually just feel bad for her. I feel like the
Yeah,
director was
sympathy.
like, "Oh, you have to keep dancing," and she's like, "It's been 8 hours. I don't want
She's just
to
like
dance
that
anymore."
smile. When I post this, upload this, I will attach the GIF to this, and I'll let you know what we're talking about. But feel free to use it in any context because it works in any context. I can pretty proudly say that it'll work in anything. And don't worry, Zach will laugh at it because he loves it.
I, it's so great. It's so great.
I could nearly just answer in that, and I think you'd be pretty happy. But man, we've covered a lot of different things here. But wrestling at the moment, we're gearing up at time of recording. Like we said, we're gearing up for WrestleMania season. We're gearing up for NWA Hard Times. We'll talk
Mhm.
about NWA a little bit because I've just recently started watching Power, and I've I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I have.
It's
Um,
surprising.
yeah, and because like the first episode I watched, because the beauty of it is that it's just like it's so accessible to watch. Just load it right up on YouTube, and you're like, yep, this is great. I can just watch this, and it's easy. Um,
Yeah.
which is where isn't YouTube accessible? It's there. So I didn't think that I'd like it as much as I did because when I've like what I've seen of it, I've started watching it in the last like 2 or 3 weeks and just kind of binged it, as you do with anything now. You just binge everything. But I started watching it and I'm like, I was seeing stuff on Twitter. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be for me, to be completely honest. But I always give a lot of wrestling just a chance because I'm like, if it's wrestling, I'm going to give it a chance to watch it and see if I like it. But I've really enjoyed it because again, it's very simple the way it's presented. Obviously, it's a throwback and whatever, but it's just a nice wrestling show that I don't really have to think too hard about, and it doesn't go for very long. It only goes for about an hour, doesn't it? It's hour-long episodes. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah. I mean, like,
Yeah,
there's some flexibility, but they've been ranging from like 50 minutes to an hour 10.
yeah, and it doesn't take too much out of your day. You can kind of just watch it whatever time. Be like, yep, this is like it's not asking for a long time to watch anything. But is that what you've been? What have you been primarily watching at the moment? Is it a lot of NWA? Is it other stuff?
Yeah, lately it's been NWA. Like that's my like weekly. I actually haven't watched today's episode yet, so I think I
No,
know
don't
what I'm
worry.
doing after we chat. I was watching AEW for a little bit, and I liked it, but I don't know. They didn't hook me.
Mm, that's how I
Um,
feel about it too.
yeah, yeah. Like they do a lot of good. Like and I like a lot of what they do. Big fan of so much of their roster, but there's just something that's not clicking. Geez.
Yeah, I'm the same. I know exactly what you mean without even you needing to explain it because that's exactly how I feel. Something's not clicking, but I don't know what's not clicking. I can't put
Yeah,
my finger
yeah.
on it.
I remember like that watching that first episode, and I was like, I was like super excited and everything. And I was like, okay, you got to give me a hook. You got to end this show like on a huge note. And I'm not. Yeah, yeah. Look, say what you will about Jack Swagger. Um,
Jake
uh,
Hager.
uh, Jake Hagar. Yeah, exactly. Like,
He
that's
didn't do it
not
for
the.
me either. He's not like a big, like, ooh, I'm gonna keep watching this, like,
That's it.
whatever.
He's not the hook that they needed. I think
Yeah,
Jericho has been absolutely amazing. I'm a
yep,
longtime Jericho fan, and I think this is some of his career best, actually. Um, but I don't know. They're still learning, and I respect that, and I appreciate that they still need some room to grow. But
definitely.
until they're ready to fire on all cylinders, I got to spend my time elsewhere.
I agree, and especially not trying to drive a wedge in the two because I'm not about that at all. But if you do have something on the other hand with NXT, I know you're probably not watching NXT on a regular basis or at all or whatever, but
No,
NXT is a very polished product,
yeah,
and it definitely knows what it's doing, if in a weird way, but Dynamite, like you said, I'm a fan of a lot of their roster. I'm a fan of a lot of stuff they're doing. Something isn't clicking, but that's not necessarily means to say that it won't hook me. They definitely could. I still am like definitely keeping up with what's going on. I watched last week because I won a free code to watch it, so I was like, oh, I'll watch last week. It was a good show. It's just
sweet.
again something isn't just clicking, and I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what you need to do, but you need to do something to keep me invested.
Yeah,
But they've got a lot of room. They're again, like you said, they've on. Well, how long have they been on television for now? 4 months. This is their
yeah,
third or
something
fourth
like
month.
that.
So again, they're still very young in what they're doing, and I wish nothing but the best across the board for everything. I just want good wrestling everywhere because it just makes the industry grow, and that's what we all want.
Likewise.
Is we want the industry to be great no matter what you're watching, because you watch a New Japan product and you know exactly what you're getting with that kind of stuff. Great wrestling. You watch an AEW product, you know what you're getting with that. WWE product, whatever you're watching, just enjoy it and just love it. And let's stop being assholes to one another about what we like. That would be a perfect world
Yes.
for me, because we're all getting good wrestling, no matter what we're really watching at this point. At some point in the time of any one of these shows, there's going to be a good wrestling match, or there's going to be a good wrestling segment, whatever you want to call it. We're just getting a lot of good wrestling. And it all ties back into the fact that it's just a great time to be a wrestling fan. And I'm just really excited about that. Something else I'm very excited about is the fact that you and the Two Finger Guns Club are doing something very. It's a big endeavor. It's a very
Oh
big
my
endeavor
goodness.
coming up in February. Explain to everybody what that is. The floor is yours to kind of, I guess, in a wrestling sense, put this over. But what is this
Uh,
endeavor? Because I mean, hats off to you guys because it's it's big.
yeah. Well, thank you for bringing this up. Actually, I really appreciate that. I'm going to do my best to articulate this, but this is kind of like the the brainchild of the producers at Two Finger Guns Club. What we're doing is the 28 in 28. February's coming up. We're going to be recording and releasing a new podcast every single day of the month. That's obviously not just me. We have a handful of we have a small roster of podcasts within our network, which continues to grow, of course. Smark and Friends will be contributing. There will be a couple Smark and Friends episodes, both like a standard episode in which I watch wrestling with people who don't watch wrestling, plus a couple little variants that we're going to play with the idea, the concept, maybe turn it on its head a little bit. Won't say too much beyond that. Of course, we also got Rocket Man Explorers, which is going to be doing, you know, excuse me, formerly known as Boldly Boinking, exploring the world of sci-fi. From there, we're going to be doing quite a bit. I don't want to spill the beans on too much more because I don't really know what I do and do not have the liberty to say. But through the month of February, Two Finger Guns Club will be releasing a new podcast every single day of the month. And also, we do recognize that this is a leap year, so it's actually 28 and 28 plus 1. Because, of course, we have to start on a leap year.
Of course.
Fortune has presented itself as such. but yeah, that's what we're doing. 28 and 28, right around the corner. I actually cut the season short for Smark and Friends. Usually we do 6 episode deals per season. We only did 5 this season because like I was like, oh man, I really need to prepare for what I got coming around the bend. I gotta
Yeah.
get on that.
I applaud you guys because that is I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun to listen to, but it's a big endeavor, and I'm just like, this is exciting for you guys. When you originally posted that like this Thursday is the season finale of Smark and Friends, I was like, bitch, what? I was like, excuse me, I've just gotten back. What are we doing here? And then when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. But again, big adventure for you guys, and I'm just very happy to be just here and just like, yeah, I'm along for the ride. I'm gonna listen to these. It's gonna be fun. Of course, starting on a leap year.
Yeah.
He's even
Okay.
adding in it. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. I hope everybody checks that out. I will, of course, link everything in the description below to all of that, where you can find all of that as well. It's been great talking to you. This has just been something that we've been brewing for a little while, and it's just like, yes, we finally got the first chat on the way. First of many, I hope, by the way.
First of many,
I hope to
absolutely.
talk to you again.
This is a challenge, and I've communicated this to you before that I kind of have with Smark and Friends is like I'm more so speaking with people who don't know the fandom, and it doesn't leave a lot of room to welcome folks such as yourself. But I'm working on things. But I do want us to get on the horn another time
Definitely.
and chat. Yeah.
Definitely, because I'm pretty sure the way that we've had this chat now, we could probably talk about many other things that don't just involve wrestling, because
Yeah.
there's many different avenues we could go down and just have great conversations with. But I'm glad I got to pick your brain a little bit because, again, we've been waiting for this for a little while.
Yeah, man.
Like 2020, I was like, I gotta talk to Zach at some point. And it's only January and we're already doing so I'm happy about that. Please tell everyone where they can find you on social media so they can be following you, because anyone that listens to me should follow you because we have similar senses of humor. And
Thanks, man.
you post good tweets, so I'm like, I'll give that a like. There's that validation for you.
Yes, the dopamine. Follow me at Smark and Friends on Twitter and Instagram. In fact, please follow us on Instagram. We're trying to get the optics up over there. But again, I love interacting with people on Twitter as well. Also, please follow at Two Finger Guns Club on Twitter. On Twitter, it's the digit 2, not the word 2. And on Instagram, it's TWO. So it's a little confusing, but please bear with me. It's totally worth investing the time to find those proper handles and following. You can also follow me at Smarkmouth. That's. I don't really know what I'm doing with that Twitter anymore. I think I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
It works for me.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Smirk and Friends, Two Finger Guns Club, those are great handles to follow.
Yeah, make sure you follow Smark and Friends on Instagram because you put up cool Instagram stories that I really like. Sometimes they're just little questions, like your gym tunes, wrestling gym tune themes, things, whatever it was. I worded that really weird, and I was like, Sami Zayn, I up you with Bianca Belair's theme because you can go for a nice jog to that. Trust me.
That's a good song. That's a good song.
you get your workout under that song. But make sure everyone knows where to follow me, Josh Robinson 00 across the board. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, there's a Facebook page as well. Make sure to check out everything that I'm doing with Wrestling Reverb and here on the Josh Robinson Show, as well as everything I do on YouTube. All the links are down below. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Josh Robinson Show. Thank you, Zach, for joining me once again. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Josh. I wasn't sure if you were leaving me a space there. You're going for the end. Josh, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was awesome, dude.
No problem at all. First of many, everybody. First of many.
Absolutely.
And please, be kind to one another. I like saying that at the end. I'm very Ellen DeGeneres when I say that, but please be kind to one another because it is important. Until next time, peace out.